Okay. So welcome again to the API working group. So after the last meeting, I created some issues with our discussion. I mean, the first meeting was more like kickoff. And I think what we can do is like for the meetings, maybe we can work mainly on the issues asynchronously, and then when we are together in the meeting, maybe we can catch up and make a brief summary to the other team members. So I think we can go over all the issues. So at the moment, we mainly have 4 things. So the first one is improve the GraphQL API deprecation process. So I'm not sure if maybe Luke was working on this, but he's working asynchronously. So maybe Marcus or Alex can update into this one. If not, maybe we can move to the next one. But if you know anything about this, what is the status of this and what is the progress?
I commented on the first issue that Luke looked into, and he proposed using the deprecation issue template for API deprecations, or especially GraphQL deprecations, and extending it with a few steps just so the process is clear, like when we need to announce the deprecations. And there's also like deprecation entries for the release post that we can create in advance. And yeah, I'm not familiar with those things, but it sounds like a good idea to me. And what I wrote in a comment is that we might also need some kind of triage so we can keep track of all the deprecations for each major milestone.
Yeah, and the other one is about considering whether we would have a longer deprecations process for GraphQL. This is particularly important because, of course, if you have GraphQL queries are typed, and so you'll get different kinds of failures if a user uses a deprecated field or a query parameter for a REST API. If you pass an ignored query parameter, or you expect a field that is not provided, it can be ignored, that will fail in a more breaking change way for the client in GraphQL. So there's a consideration of whether we keep stuff around for longer in GraphQL in order to minimize breaking changes for downstream clients.
Okay, so we are working on that, and maybe we still have to work before 15.0, right? Because maybe we have as it's a major release, maybe we need to do something before that, right?
Well, the only thing it depends what we do. If we get lots of buy-in right now, I mean, we could possibly hold off removing some of our deprecations. It might just be a case of making a decision now for the next cycle, saying from now on we will keep deprecations around for longer. There would be I think it's basically just about making a policy decision. It wouldn't be about making large changes, but if anything, it would be about sort of avoiding making changes that we would otherwise have made.
Is there any risk in deferring? I mean, if one choice is do nothing for now while we come to a conclusion, is there a risk in?
No, doing nothing in this case is the safest option, because this is the removal of these deprecated elements that causes the breakage. So
right,
the longer we hold off removing it, the longer we can hold off the breakage.
And I guess I'm curious if there's any objection for any on the call and going that route while we keep having some more discussion and coming up with some conclusions. And maybe we can
not on the call, but I know Brett Walker on the issue commented just to advocate in that we should be removing technical debt where possible. There is a good argument for that. On some cases, we might have to consider things on a case-by-case basis, but I certainly, I was one who proposed this. I would be an advocate of keeping stuff around as long as it's not causing other problems.
Right.
All other things being equal, of course.
Cool. Yeah, maybe we can try to promote this question and get feedback from those who might be advocating for the other side, and take the discussion there. But yeah, but maybe there's some use cases where we say let's go ahead and move forward with it, and then for everything else let's hold off and kind of flesh this out a bit more.
Yeah, I'd be very supportive of that. I'm sure there'll be cases where there's a lot of technical debt, and in some cases where it's very minor. So there's be a bit of judgment involved.
Okay, moving on. Achilles, can you update about the status of the API documentation?
Yeah, so Katy captured actually the current status perfectly in her comments. As you can see, I have a link to it. So it's it's pretty consistent right now. We don't, and actually this is because, it's a manual process. And we have many older endpoints that haven't been updated for, since they got released, let's say, in the documentation state as is at the time they were released. So we need to clean them up. But yeah, it's a manual process, and if we want to be consistent, we have to do it manually. I mean, in an ideal world things would be automatically created, but this is the case for the GraphQL, but not for REST API. Yeah.
And so what do you think are the next steps on that issue?
Yeah, so we could actually figure out the pages that don't follow the style guides and create issues, and then work from there, I guess. I can take this on, actually.
Okay, next one is we are kind of defining what are the users of the API, different consumers, personas, or like tooling. Maybe you, Grant, can update on this one.
Yeah, sure. So the focus I've had has been on the survey and thinking about setting up customer interviews. So I've gotten access to Qualtrics, and I put together a skeleton survey just based on some of the feedback we'd gotten in the issue, some of the questions you had raised, Victor. And I wanted to expand on that, consider any other questions we wanted to include, and see how to get that embedded into our documentation. So just kind of getting started on that, but open to other thoughts on questions that we might want to ask. I know we don't want it to be too lengthy, and we can follow up in calls with customers who are interested. I think similar to this issue, I mentioned that update our handbook page to include additional exit criteria for updating our personas. So there was some discussion in another issue I linked there, talking about enterprise personas that are using our APIs, trying to understand those personas. So I think throughout this process, if we get clarity on particular personas that are users of our APIs, we can flesh those out and update our documentation to account for those. And let's see, yeah, and then the last note, I haven't made too much progress on this end yet, but I'd like to start identifying customers to reach out to that are large customers using our APIs, and go that route. So one angle is getting survey feedback, and the other is kind of using the information we already have, identifying our existing customers that we know are using APIs, larger enterprise customers especially, and starting to schedule some calls with those teams.
Do you need anything particular from us?
Sorry?
Do you need anything particular from developers?
So, I shared a link to that survey. If there's something that you think would be valuable to capture in that survey, let me know. I don't think there's anything specific otherwise at this time. But I'll definitely ping everyone if I think of something.
Marcus, you added something there.
Yeah, I just had a point that we have some large open source instances like Debian and GNOME, for example, and they could be interesting too, because they probably have a lot of tooling that they've built themselves, because they usually don't use enterprise licenses, even though they could get one for free.
Right, yeah, fair point.
from my side, there's first a question that is it helpful as I just ping you here and there in issues in Slack when I run across such users, or you would like or you don't find these useful?
Yeah, I think that's useful. I mean, we could also capture capture like links to the Salesforce accounts or lead links and drop them in that issue. That could also help. I'm open with both, but I'll try to document them somewhere that we can all discover the list and feedback. I'll probably will, once I get going, start capturing the feedback in Dovetail and make that accessible. Yeah, I haven't set the framework up for myself yet, but yeah, feel free to do Slack or drop a Salesforce link into that issue. Yeah,
I will stay away from the Salesforce link because it's hard to find sometimes. On the other hand, I can already, even now, I have a few enterprise contacts who are pretty heavy users.
Great.
So just let me know and I can connect you with them.
Yeah, feel free to ping me those this week, and I want to set something up for the next couple of weeks.
Sure.
To get started. Yeah.
Next one, you also have the API Observability Grant that you have been like kind of organizing the work around that.
Yeah, let me take a note real quick on that last question. Yeah, so on this one, I haven't made too much progress on my end. I think that the last material thing that's coming to mind, at least right now, is a conversation in Slack. Luke and Paul were sharing some resources there for what we already have, and I haven't had a chance to go in too deep on that. So yeah, I think if we can keep organizing issues into that epic, that will help and start to get a sense. I think some teams are aware of different dashboards or different tools that maybe not everyone's familiar with. One thought is that it could be great to also get a page, like maybe a handbook page or some documentation that really kind of captures how to go and get data about our APIs for our internal teams. So I think if we can just keep organizing them there, I know on my end, I'm going to dig a bit deeper and try to see what seems to be most important for us. And one thing that comes to mind is tied back to deprecations. I think we already have some things there that can help us to see how heavily some of these fields are being used. So if we are seeing that certain fields are dropping entirely in usage, maybe we can start to remove those as a priority versus, we can see which ones are being heavily used and kind of steer clear or start messaging more heavily about using other fields that we recommend. That's where I am right now, but open to hearing any other priorities or opinions on the call.
Okay, yeah, let's move to the next point. I think that for me, how I picture this is like to have like, as I say, like catch ups here in the call and then work asynchronously. So, and related to that, I mean, after the previous meeting, I created some issues and assigned people, but there is still a lot of people that they don't have any assigned issues at the moment. So, so I think for those people here in the call, I think that you can maybe assign to the issues that you find that they are more interesting for you to work, or you can leave feedback on any issue, or if create new issues if you think like we are missing important things. And yeah, and if anyone now have better ideas to organize this group or the work, happy to hear that here or on Slack or in any way, so yeah, so feel free to give us feedback about what is the best way to organize the work. And anyone wants to comment about that or how we organize? Because this is my first working group as well, so I'm not sure if you have experience working in other working groups here at GitLab and you think in better ways.
This isn't fully fleshed out, but one thing I was thinking about this morning is how we might be able to start using labels like we do with our own projects and things to like come up with some rationale for how we want to prioritize, and then start using like priority labels. For example, if we think something's higher impact based on rules we're defining in this call, that might help us kind of surface a few issues to the top and get a little more clarity around what's most important.
I also saw like we don't use the workflow labels yet, so all the issues are just in the open column. And yeah, maybe the usual workflow labels don't make sense here, but maybe we could define some stages.
Yeah, good point. I think that the people that are assigning to the issues, I guess that is, they have more responsibility to keep those updated, or if we have to create follow-up issues. At the end is like in some way like the responsibility to make this happen or make progress, or it doesn't have to make progress every single week. But after some time, we can see some progress on the issues, or if it is blocked, share here, and maybe other people can jump and help into that. And anyone on this, or I move into the next point. So the next point that I have here is like we are talking about a lot of things that we can do on our API, but I'm not sure if we are missing an issue that is like investigate what is the API, like kind of the state of the art, or what is doing other big players in the industry, or maybe we already have that information. I don't know, but if you think that could be worth to investigate or to have more in deep, or like in one issue with all the information together, we can create that issue and work on that. Or if not, I'm not sure. I'm just asking about that.
I think it's a really good idea, knowing how we stack up against other people and what they're doing. So yes, having somebody who understands that and having that in one place sounds like a really good plan.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be also nice to have like a list of things or other applications that you have an API and how they use it. And yeah, for example, I'm thinking about Stripe has a very nice API documentation. They have like code snippets, and yeah, maybe we can like have different categories like GraphQL apps or REST apps or documentation, and see what other people do. I think it could be helpful.
Okay, is anyone interested to work on that? That maybe people that they don't have at the moment any issue assigned, or I can create the issue and then we can decide later.
I think there's also a good candidate being split up. It'd be a good idea to identify services or endpoints that we'd like to investigate, and rather than have one person try and collect all that information, which sounds overwhelming, try and get individuals to do a survey and report back on Stripe or something else and what have you, and then try and summarize that together, because I think it's probably too much for one person.
Yeah, and I'm also trying to like assign issues to always to different people, like more than one. So in some way, like it's kind of a shared responsibility, but also like it's not just only some issues can be very overwhelming for people. So if you see that something is very big, start to like split splitting the issues into smaller ones so we can make good progress.
There was one thing that occurs to me is that there's some important overlap there between that and what Grant was talking about with talking to the heaviest API users. It'd be also good to know for the people who use our API, what are other APIs that they use and how do they use those? Because that kind of, that suite of tools is also an interesting consideration. You know, are we doing the same thing in the same way as the other people that they interact with?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll make note. I think that's, you know, maybe something that could fit in the survey or just as an interview question as I'm meeting with customers.
Okay, we have 3 minutes left. So if anyone else wants to comment any other topic, we still have 3 minutes. Cool. Okay. So yeah. So have a great week, and yeah, see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.